Hey everyone, welcome back to the Always Closing podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Ethan Applen with the agency here is joining us on the podcast. So Ethan, thank you so much for coming down, making the drive down here to Diamond Bar.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you coming on and sharing some knowledge with us.
Yeah, this is great.
So if someone may not know you, can you give us a little bit about your background, how you got into the industry, when you got into the industry, where you're kind of at now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually kind of a more recent entrant into real estate. I've been a realtor now, I can tell you, almost exactly 4 years. I just had to take my continuing education to renew my license. So I know I'm at the 4-year mark.
Okay.
I, previous to this, had a career in sort of strategy and business development for a long time. I worked in entertainment for a long time, in the studios and media. Kind of a corporate job for a long time. Did that, was pretty successful, did well. Was at Warner Brothers for a long time. Ultimately kind of found it, I guess I wasn't feeling emotionally fulfilled with that. I wanted to do something a little different, get a little closer to the consumer. I had done a lot of work with startups. And so I ended up leaving that to start my own business, actually. Did that for a while, and then and actually had moved out of town, and then COVID hit.
Out of LA?
I moved out of LA for a little bit. I should say too. So I grew up in Southern California, Orange County and San Diego. So SoCal native.
Yeah.
I lived in LA most of the last 25 years. Moved up here kind of to work in entertainment a long time ago.
Was that something that you always had kind of like aspired to do when you were younger?
I think so. In my 20s, I think, is when I kind of decided to get into that. I moved up when I was, 24, 25. Started entry level. I was a PA, production assistant on a TV show, Felicity, for anybody close to my age. Back then, worked on some cool gigs. Worked on a big Spielberg movie at the time, and it was great. But was kind of trying to figure out where that was going, and so went to business school at USC.
Nice.
Got an MBA, and it was coming out of that I actually got into strategy and business in entertainment for as long as I did, and actually kind of focused on entertainment and technology for a lot of that time. Which was very cool. It was a great ride. I did that through the 2000s into kind of till about 2015, which was a really exciting time to be in that, right? It was when YouTube came out, Facebook was new. It's amazing that stuff's not that old.
Yeah, when you say that, it's like, it sounds crazy because you would think like all this stuff is so, it feels like it's been around a lot longer than that.
Totally. We take it for granted, right? I mean, right now we were talking about content before we started this, and all my, most of my days spent kind of on devices and phone and doing content.
Right.
Wasn't that long ago that was a brand new thing. But I was on my BlackBerry, right, or my Palm.
Right. Do you think that maybe had something to do, like your background in entertainment and that industry, maybe just to kind of get her up to speed of what we're talking about? You've kind of gravitated more on building your business through content, right? Through social media, through making videos. I see you do a lot of educational stuff. Do you think that kind of maybe came a little bit from that as opposed to grinding on the phones and the cold calling and the door knocking and all that sort of thing?
I think so. I mean, I think there was a moment at the start when I started the business where it was kind of learning the business and figuring out real estate. Getting into it, again, was partly wanting to be closer to the consumer, and I got into real estate kind of with an eye that there were some things that I could bring to it that were interesting, right? Not just the marketing piece, but I think a professionalism to how to deal with clients and creating that relationship, that it wasn't just a transaction, but how can I work with a client for their whole life, right? They're going to keep coming back. They're going to refer me to people. But to your point, when it comes to content, it was now, like over the last couple of years, it's how can you look at content and kind of create a system around that and create a business around it. So one, create the content, but then how can I use that to to create a message that I think is going to resonate with those clients, those potential customers. And that helps convey who I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it too. Is like when you create a lot of content, which is something that we focus on a lot here with the podcast, with constantly trying to put out as much short videos as possible as well. But I feel like it helps the consumer kind of know who you are before you ever actually meet them in person.
Yeah.
Even you just doing some research on yourself, going through yours is like, okay, I kind of have an idea of his personality before he even gets here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that personality is so important, right? Because, I mean, the other part of the online piece that I've run into, particularly with real estate, is I think it's a challenge we face, is that we're kind of commoditized, right, by the online sites.
Yeah.
People think that we're not worth as much anymore.
Right.
And we're a little bit faceless.
Right.
I think the best way that we combat that is to show people who we are and show them our personalities. Because ultimately, people are going to work with us. They do want someone that's capable and trustworthy, but they also want someone that they want to hang out with, right?
Yeah. That's what I've always said about this industry. Is I think people are always going to do business with just people they like to be around.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it really comes down to. I think a lot of times people may focus on like, hey, maybe I'll do it for half a point less or whatever it is. But sometimes there is some people that care about that maybe more. But I think the majority is going to just go with who they like, who they kind of vibe with, who they have a similar personality to.
Yeah.
And I think that's in reality going to be more important at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think the challenge with that competing on rate, to your point, like cutting your rates, that may get you a deal on either side, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're the client and you're looking for someone to do a cut rate, that's probably someone you're going to do one deal with.
Right.
And even as an agent, I think if you're competing on price, you're giving a message that you're probably going to work with that person like once.
Yeah.
But if I want to work with someone over and over again, I need to show them I'm bringing more value, right? And they need to want to work with me regardless of what that commission's going to be.
Right. And also, I feel like you're kind of attracting maybe not the right type of client that you want, like you're saying long term, because that person is just going to be searching for price. And there's always going to be someone cheaper than you. So maybe they do work with you on this one, but like you're saying, maybe on the next one, they find someone that's slightly cheaper and they go with that person next.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I've had this discussion even with friends recently, right, who don't, I mean, unfortunately, I have great friends who don't see the value of particularly, say, a buyer's agent, right? And they're like, well, what's the point? I can find everything online.
Yeah.
And I have to have that argument with them. And I've been thinking about this, and I said, let's say you got sued, God forbid,
Right.
whatever. You got sued for $2 million, and you had to go out and find representation. You're probably not going to argue with that attorney on price,
Right.
To save you a couple $1,000s. At the end of the day, you're looking for the best representation.
Right.
And this is the same type of thing. Like, you're talking about not a lot of money on that percentage spread when you really want the best representation.
Yeah, because the other side of the deal is so much bigger than the little commission you're paying.
Right.
So you may maybe pay an extra few thousand here, but if this person saves you 10, 15,000 or more in the long run, then
Absolutely.
yeah. How about like what areas do you mainly focus on? I know you kind of primarily focus more on the West LA on that side.
Well, I focus in Studio City, and that's where I live, and so I know it the best, right? I have deep roots in Studio City. We've lived there a long time. I first moved to Sherman Oaks when I moved up in 2000. I've lived in Studio City now 7 years. My son goes to school there. We play baseball there. So kind of there in the Hollywood Hills.
Right.
But, we work everywhere, right? I've sold homes everywhere from Ventura County to sort of East Pasadena.
Okay.
All over the place. But that's kind of my bread and butter and where I know really well.
How competitive is that area right now? I mean, I would imagine like Hollywood Hills, that like, the lure of that area maybe attracts a lot of agents to try to like penetrate that area. How competitive is it?
I mean, it's pretty competitive. I think everywhere's competitive right now, right? I mean, you've got more agents than you've got listings right now. Exactly. So I kind of think everywhere is.
What has made you stand out with sellers, with buyers in that area?
I mean, I think you have to come at it from one side. I come come at it with an abundance mindset, right? That you have to think there's enough for everybody. And I think that's part of it. And come at it with confidence that there is what you need there. And you go into clients with that belief. And not comparing yourself too much with other people, and just knowing that you will give the utmost to your client, and that you can serve them the best that you possibly can. And I think that's what the clients are looking for.
Right.
So that's kind of how I come at it,
That makes sense.
and being prepared, right? Going in there with the best possible preparation.
Do you feel like in those highly competitive areas that, let's say sellers or even buyers are expecting a certain level of expertise, of knowledge, of experience, compared to maybe other areas that are not as competitive?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think you can get that anywhere.
Yeah.
I think what I think's interesting is what we forget is that people don't buy and sell most people don't buy and sell houses that often. Right. And so I think sometimes we take for granted that everybody has the knowledge we have. And then you realize, well, it used to be that the average time you'd be in a home was 7 years, right? But I've seen in Southern California now it's gone way up.
Right.
That you're in the teens as to how long people are in homes.
Right.
And so you could forget everything about what it's like to buy or sell a house in 12, 13, 14 years.
And stuff changes a lot in that time too.
Totally. I deal with people that don't remember they need to get pre-qualified or pre-approval letters before going to see homes.
Right.
And it's like, no, you got to do that first. You got to talk to a lender,
right?
Before you start these things. And so, you've got to go in and kind of walk people through the steps and make sure they're comfortable, right?
Right. I see that you've posted a lot of content regarding like the fires. What do you see now, a couple months later, the effects of that? Is that still a lot of people, is it making it even more like competitive because of obviously there's no homes.
Yeah.
That made it worse, and all those people are moving out of there now. What have you seen the effects now that's been a couple months later?
I mean, I wish I could say it was more concrete. I mean, I read the data.
Right.
And it's kind of all over the map. I mean, the most recent things I've seen are on a month-by-month basis. And they'll say, well, we've seen more sales in one micro neighborhood, but less sales in another. Like, say it's Cheviot, I'm going to talk West Side. So more sales in Cheviot Hills, but less in Mar Vista. And so I don't think that the trend has really, borne out yet.
Right.
On a macro level. That said, I mean, we know how many homes burnt, right? We know how many we lost.
Right.
We know that a certain percentage of those families won't move back. I mean, so first, those homes lost are out of the inventory.
Right.
Right. We can guess it might take 3 years to rebuild those if they're going to be rebuilt. I'm just assuming, time to clean up the lots and then the rebuild time. A number of those families won't move back, so they're going to enter the buying pool for the rest of the city.
Right.
So now you've got more demand where we already had lower inventory.
A lot of those people, it might be kind of difficult for them to rebuild there anyways, because what they bought their property for is not what it's going to cost now to rebuild them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think
it's really devastating to see all that. I know we're used to fires here in Southern California, but to that extent and that much damage is really eye-opening to see something like that. Yeah.
And a rebuild process is hard. I mean, I think a lot of people might just want to take that, let's say somebody's been there, lived there for 30, 40 years. Maybe they're a little older. They say, you know what, I'm going to take that check and I'm going to buy a condo somewhere. Or I'm going to buy a smaller home, take that opportunity. I'm not going to wait 3 years, go through that laborious process, live in a rental.
Yeah.
I'm just going to buy somewhere nice, a little smaller.
Yeah. How do you find like the perfect home for someone, and how important is it to kind of understand their lifestyle, what they're into, and how do you take that and then find the perfect home for them?
That's a great question. And the reason I say that is that I think that is one of the key sort of superpowers that realtors need on the buy side.
I feel like especially here in LA specifically, because there's so many different personality types, lifestyle types here, and even from city to city, it changes sometimes.
And I also think buyers don't necessarily know what they're looking for. And so you have to act a little bit like a design thinker and figure out, you have to work with them to figure out what it is.
Right.
At least they don't know in a way that they can tell you, right? I think websites, for instance, like a Zillow or Redfin, has taught them to think in terms of, I'm looking for 4 bedrooms, 3 bath.
Set the filters.
That's it. Set the filters. That's what I'm looking
Right.
for in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. I went through it with a client. It was actually my mother-in-law, and we spent like 9 months looking at homes. And we looked at every kind of home in every neighborhood until we really nailed down what she wanted, right? And what we got to was, I think you had to nail down, like, what are the real things you want? Like, what are the emotional things that you're looking for in a home? And, what do you want to feel when you walk into a home? What are those activities you want when you're in a home that you want to do? When
Right.
you're leaving your home, where do you want to go? What is your lifestyle like?
Right.
And then for her, ultimately, and I've used this now ever since I had this experience, as I said, does the home spark joy? And we've used that every time now. You can look at a home, it can check all the boxes, but does it spark joy? And if it doesn't, we'd say, okay, that one's not going to work. You're not going
Right.
to.
Have you had like I'm gonna guess that you have, but I'm saying, what do you kind of do when your buyers have like unrealistic expectations when it comes to maybe price points or the size that they want and maybe their budget?
Yeah, those are tough. You have to have those conversations, and those can be tough conversations. But that's what you are, right? You're the consigliere,
Right.
the advisor. It's the uncomfortable part. You're not the yes man.
Right.
Right? You are the person that has to have the conversation. That is, this is the reality. This is what I believe.
Yeah.
And it's true from a selling point too, right? We have that a lot where there's the homes that sit on the market, right? Where someone says, I've lived here 30 years, this home's worth $5 million.
Right.
And I can say, I think it's worth $4 million, $4.5 million. If I was going to list it, that's what I think it should go at.
Right.
I'll list it for whatever you tell me, but I think it should list at 4.5.
Yeah. Have you ever done something like where, let's say, you don't agree at the listing price, and you maybe negotiate it in a way where you say, okay, we're gonna try what you say, but if in 30 days we're not getting no offers, we're gonna move it here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100% that's a good strategy. And I think those are conversations as an agent you need to have up front, right? Because I don't think you don't want to surprise the client later.
Right.
And I think it's important to bring your opinion. I have a colleague who said, your view is your value, which I love that. I love that saying. And so I give him credit that I use that. But it is important, right? You need to be able to say that and not just agree.
Exactly.
And there's some agents that, you can get a lot of listings always agreeing. You can get them, but you might not sell them. And you don't get paid till you sell them, and so that's the goal.
Right.
So that's the most important part.
What would you say is like your most challenging transaction that you've had up to date? And what did you learn from that? Did it make you a better realtor?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know.
Because us here in escrow, we come across all kinds of situations.
Yeah.
We've had some difficult ones.
Yeah. I think I've been relatively lucky so far. I feel like every transaction you run into a surprise, right? Or there's something
or something, yeah.
Something comes up, and that's part of it. That's part of the deal.
Right.
It's like construction or producing. It's like
not everything's just going to go picture perfect the whole way.
That's it.
Yeah.
Part of it is problem solving.
Yeah.
I've been lucky that it's like I haven't run into anything huge yet.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is communication, usually, right? That I've luckily been into.
Right.
Avoid litigation and things like that. It's open lines of communication, over communicate,
Right.
disclose, let everybody know what's out there.
Absolutely.
Look for win-win situations.
And I'm going to switch topics for a second, but I know we were briefly mentioned it a few minutes ago, but I've seen you talk a lot about tariffs and the economy's kind of going up and down. It's kind of a roller coaster right now. How do you see that affecting the real estate market? I know it does have an effect on interest rates, and what's your opinion on that?
I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, so I held an open house this weekend on Sunday. The tariffs started to hit the market last week, and I'm not sure when this will get posted, and so we'll see. But this was just happening.
Right.
It was pretty quiet first hour. I was pretty afraid nobody was going to come to the open house on Sunday. Basically, the market took a huge hit that Friday. I was afraid everybody would be looking at their investment accounts and be staying home worried. Right. Luckily, it was still a pretty busy open house. I think the biggest risk right now is that everybody, and I'm not even going to talk, right, none of this has to do with politics, but I think investors in the market like certainty, and there's so much uncertainty right now that people get a little worried to make big investments.
Yeah.
And the home is like your biggest investment, unless you're doing big buying businesses or things like that, or you're a hedge fund.
Right.
Then,
and even in the stock market itself too, right? I mean, because a lot of people are saying buy the dip, right now is the time to buy.
Right.
But then if you're uncertain what's going to happen, you're like, it might get worse.
And that's it. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, if you'd bought the stock market yesterday, you'd have done pretty well. I was watching some stocks went up 15% today.
That's wild.
Because they made a U-turn on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do worry about that. On a housing market that was already tight. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more certainty to loosen up the market a little bit. For an administration that I was thinking, might, being as pro-business as it is, kind of loosen up a lot of things in the housing market.
Right.
Hopefully we get past some of this stuff quickly.
Exactly.
We'll see.
Do you have any content ideas that, let's say, that have worked really well for you? And also, what are ways that you find ideas to make content about?
I would say the biggest thing that I'm focused on right now, and that I think everybody should focus on, is authenticity. It sounds really simple, but I actually find it really difficult. I've discovered, and luckily I have a very honest friend that said this to me, is that I can do TV anchor voice pretty easily.
But we need to hear that.
And some of my videos do have TV anchor voice. And I'm trying to get rid of that. I'm trying to do more like conversational voice, because I want people to know what I sound like, which maybe is a TV anchor. But I think authenticity, look, first of all, I come from entertainment. A lot of people that I know work in entertainment, they will tell you YouTube is the biggest entertainment company in the world. And I say that because consumers are watching YouTube. They're watching user-generated content created by people like us. And what they're looking for is authenticity. They're looking for stories about people. They aren't just looking for hyper polished content.
Right.
They want to know real content about people. They want to know about stuff that's hard. They want to know stuff that's funny. So I'm kind of trying to get into that more and more now. Less polished, less scripted.
Just where your personality comes out more.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's tough to do and not be, because it also can't be really boring.
So speaking of that topic, it's funny because we really try to stay on a schedule about making content, right?
Yeah.
So we always have stuff coming out. And I'm like, geez, but escrow is such a boring topic. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do talking about real estate, but when it comes to escrow, it's like, how do you make that interesting?
Yeah.
So I'm like, we just gotta start just being more ourselves, talking like ourselves, not being so don't do this and that, or here's what you should, just kind of make it a little more funny, because or else it's going to be tough to get people to pay attention to escrow videos.
Yeah, dude, and I haven't cracked that yet. I mean, I again, same guy said to me, I did something about investing in your house, and he's like, well, it was pretty boring, and I was like, it's a boring topic, man. Like, but some people care. Like, they want to know.
Right.
And so those 5 people, it's a really important video, and I go for niche.
Right.
But yeah, I think but look, maybe niche, you can do that. You can make a business out of niche.
Well, the good thing is, like, I think it's important to test different platforms because, for example, let's say on Instagram or TikTok, a topic like investing in your home may not be like someone's going to stop scrolling for and sit and watch the whole thing. But there may be somebody on a search platform like YouTube that may search, something like that. Or maybe they may search something about escrow. And then, the good thing about those type of content is more evergreen, right? So it'll be there as long as you leave it up and people are searching that topic, it'll continue to get views over time.
So see, it sounds like you know this already. You're ahead of me. And this is something that I'm kind of just cluing in on is where to put content like that. And so realizing that I need to put more searchable content on YouTube or TikTok.
So how have you maybe implemented AI into your content and your business in general?
So AI is something I'm trying to lean into more and more. I'm learning more about it. A funny thing, in my old job, I realized I was looking at AI 11 years ago when I was at Warner Brothers. And had I known where it would be now, I would be a rich guy. But I obviously did not know then where it would be now.
Which is kind of crazy because, again, I remember AI coming up a long time ago, but people were saying it's going to be a thing, but it's still so far out, don't worry about it yet.
That was it. That was the old IBM and Watson days, which you don't even hear about anymore. So obviously they missed the boat. But, I started using it for kind of simple prompts to help me write things. But I use it a ton for that now, right? And so particularly for content. I use it to help me with scripts a lot. Scripts, I will write a script. I will use AI to help me refine a script. I'll put it in and say, help me just tighten this up, add a couple things.
Right.
And then I'll say, look, this is the script I wrote. Help me write captions for Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube.
Yeah.
This is what I'm trying to do. And it'll spit out
the most amazing things, right?
And actually, this is what I learned. So I've started to also listen to podcasts about ways to do this. Mm-hmm. I realized I kind of looked at AI a lot like I had been using Google for a decade, 15 years.
Right.
Where my prompts would be, Google would be like 2 words, right?
Yeah.
And then I would start that with AI. And then I'm like, okay, I'll put in a sentence.
Right.
And then I'm listening to these guys and they're like, no, do way more complicated prompts. So I'm realizing that my prompts now in AI are, okay, I'm doing a video about XYZ. I need to, create a script that's going to look like this, and then I need captions for these 3 different profiles. I need to include my contact info. I need to do this and that, the other. Can you help me create this?
Yeah.
And that's my whole prompt, and it's a paragraph. So, and then it'll spit a whole thing out.
Which it's going to need a lot less tweaking at that point.
And it's just saved me, 90% of my time if I had to do it manually. Right. That's not to say it's not going to need tweaking and I need to put my voice in it. Right. I'm not using AI to totally write these things. And then the next step too is that I've started using voice so I can just talk into my phone. It's starting to feel like that movie Her.
Yeah.
Where I'm just talking into my phone and telling it things and then spitting out reports.
Yeah, it's really amazing how far that's come. I feel like even just the last few years.
Yeah.
Like my cousin was showing my dad this the other day. My dad's an engineer. He works on planes for United Airlines. And he was like, yeah, just test it out. Like, ask him the most specific question you could think of, so he's like, this engine, this plane, and the fuel ratio for this and this and this, and it spit it out perfect. He was like jaw dropped. He could not believe it.
It's wild. So I haven't tried this yet, but I was listening to a podcast, and it's the language model that Google put out, and I forget what it's called, LM something. Mm-hmm. But you can use that. You can look at a video. So you have a 45-minute video, drop the video into this language model and say, bring me out some interesting tidbits in here that are Instagrammable.
Right.
And it'll go through the video and give you time code for those things to bring out.
Wow.
So you don't have to watch the whole 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's wild stuff.
That's amazing.
And again, we're scratching the surface. So,
I guess so. To wrap it up, I mean, what are some tips that you can give to maybe a realtor or anybody in this industry for that matter that's new or maybe that's struggling? What are some things that have helped you? What's the tips that you could leave them with?
I think one thing is that I think is really important, and this is something that I kind of realized before taking this next step that we talked about, really, which was to focus on content, which is something that I've been doing for multiple years, but I think have really refocused on in the last month or two, is that when I did that, I spent the last 6 months kind of listening to some of the really top performing agents at the agency. And I went in, they were giving talks at various meetings. And what I took away was that they all achieved their success through various means. And they all did it different ways, right? Yeah. Some of the guys door knocked, right? And they were door knocking Bel Air, right? I mean, they door knocked crazy places. Some of them were cold callers, right? Some of them picked up clients at Little League games.
Yeah.
Some of them grew up somewhere and just had great networks. I'm doing it through content.
Yeah.
My point is that there's not a single way to do it. And I think what you need to do is find what will be successful for you. And find the one that you love, right? Because if you hate door knocking, don't door knock, right? If you hate cold calling, don't cold call. Because if it sucks, don't do it. Like, life's too short.
Yeah.
Like, don't do the thing you hate.
You're not going to be happy doing it day in and day out.
No, even if you're successful.
Right.
So find the thing you love in it, and people will see that you love it, see that you're happy, and they'll want to work with you.
Would you suggest trying things though to see if you like it or not? Because sometimes people may just be a little afraid to cold call.
Yeah.
Some people may be afraid to door knock because they haven't done it in the past. It doesn't mean that you don't like it necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like here we kind of do a little bit of everything. And, we do door knocking, we do cold calling, we do a lot of social media, we do events. And I feel like the more we do it, we kind of see which ones not only do we like more, but have a better return too,
Yeah, and you do need to know a little bit of a lot of these things, right? I mean, like, I'm still doing open houses.
Yeah.
I still have my scripts.
Right.
I still have to do follow-up and calls, and I'll do a video call to somebody, and I'll get on the phone and do those chats. And cold calls still make sense. I'll still do letter writing, hard letters that I'll send to people. But you know where to do those spokes to make the most sense. But I think we have a challenge in that there's so many things you can do.
Right.
I think you have to pick a couple to focus on.
Well, Ethan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming down. I think you gave a lot of good information. Where can people follow you if they want to reach out to you?
Sure. Instagram's probably the best, at Ethan Applen Real Estate.
Okay.
Look here, at Ethan Applen Real Estate is always good. I'm on YouTube too, LinkedIn, any of those.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for coming down. Appreciate it. I know you made a long drive down here.
No, you got it. Thanks for having me. I
Again.
appreciate
Hopefully
it.
we could do this again in the future.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep in touch.
Come to my neck of the woods.
Let's do it. All right. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching.